I don't know if there was a second to the motion to terminate.
I did second.
Oh, you did, sorry.
Mayor, you know, Major was trying to be nice about it. One of the biggest hurdles that we had was every time we agreed on a route, a week after, he would change it. So it's not the police department. You know, we would do the work, and Trevor, about a week after, he would say, well, this route's not going to be good. There's some changes. We need to look at something else. And this is the stumbling block we've been going over and over. So it's not the police department's fault at all.
Okay, no, we got the picture. It's just because I didn't want it to seem like you folks have given them such a hard time that made it difficult, and at the end for them to choose to close Biscayne Boulevard. I just wanted to have this side of the story, what happened with the police, because I remember Mr. Kayard mentioning last week, 2 weeks ago, that you folks didn't work with them, and I think it was an opportunity to hear your side of the story. That's it. That's all. It's okay.
Okay, well, Mayor, I have a motion from Councilman Galvin, and the motion specifically was to terminate under the terms of the contract. It was seconded by Mayor Thundro. Would you like a roll call vote, or?
May I say something? I'm just looking at this contract, and I will point out that we can terminate the contract, but it does say that the contractor does keep his money. He gets to keep everything that he's been paid. And I don't think there's any real default provisions that we can go and say that he didn't perform in accordance with the contract. You're going to have a hard time suing it.
That's what Councilwoman said. It was loose, a loose contract.
Well, I'm looking at the contract. I'm looking at the loose contract. So we're not going to be, so to bring it back in 2 weeks to see whether we can get the money back, it doesn't appear
My
we're going to
motion
get
was
that.
to terminate based
No,
on
the
the
motion
terms
was
of the
very clear.
lease.
Yeah.
Okay.
The agreement.
We're not
You guys-
getting any money
You
back.
guys want me to repeat the motion? We're not talking about a lawsuit here. We're not talking, this
No,
is
I'm
simply.
just
Terminate
clarifying
based on the
that.
terms of the agreement.
So you spent the money, we've spent 90,000, so if you don't want a carnival, that's, you know, what you're doing.
You saying that we should have a smaller one instead of a big one?
Well, Scott had a good idea, but he's upset that Mr. Kayard
He's
is
not
not here.
here. He's not here.
He always can
I-
come back.
You
My
know-
motion, I want to vote on this motion, and then we can
Okay.
discuss something else if we want to.
Roll call. Councilwoman Keys,
No.
Councilwoman Steril,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Galvin,
Yes.
Mayor Thundro,
Yes.
Councilman Bieneme.
No.
Item passes 3-2. Tab X, discussion regarding, I'm sorry, Councilman Galvin's motion passes 3-2. Tab X, discussion regarding Biscayne Landing soil
Say that
reuse.
again. I don't hear those words very often. Just joking.
What he said? What happened?
Councilman Galvin's motion passes.
You hardly ever made any motion, Councilman. Mr. Clerk, go ahead, please, for tab
X,
X.
discussion regarding Biscayne Landing soil reuse.
Yes, Mayor and Council, you directed me to bring this item back on this date for discussion. I did meet with Mr. LaFrac. He did regarding the removal of the soil.
Okay.
There's several variables that exist here. One is that they're not ready to move forward, but they did assure me that they was not going to use the soil any longer into the lake. We are still discussing several options. We just have not been able to reach a conclusion other than it would not be used in the lake. We discuss removing it. We discuss using it in another manner that would possibly be acceptable by Durham to be brought back to this council. So the only thing that I was able to get so far is that we would not be using it in the lake, which was a paramount concern, that the soil to be used in the lake and the utilization of our system. Unfortunately, that's where I'm at. That's the gridlock that I'm at. So they did want to postpone it, but I told them that that was not the direction that I got from the council, and hence they have provided a statement if you would like for Mr. Tillman to come back and provide you with that statement, whatever you desire at this point.
Okay, from what I understand, it was that you giving us an update of what was happening, and at the beginning of the meeting, you have asked for this item to be removed, the discussion item to be removed. It's just an update of what had taken place since the last time, our last board meeting, and the directions that was given to you at that time to come back to us with something. Does that mean you said you have met with Mr. Lefrak? Does that mean that we up to nowhere from last time to now? Are you saying that there is no progress made? They just want to stop everything until they are able to provide us a report? What is that supposed to mean? I'm not sure
Okay.
that I'm...
We have made progress.
Okay.
The issue is that we have soil that was brought onto our site that's going to be used into...
They're covered, right?
I'm sorry?
They're covered.
What do you mean they're covered?
Whatever was...
Contaminated soil, is it they're covered?
Are they
on the land?
covered, or just like they're for the wind to blow?
Oh, no, they're following the treatment plan that Durham mandated.
Okay.
Which one?
thus
Which
far.
is what?
And that's to keep it watered down, keep it from being airborne, keep it in a section that is has setback requirements. So so far they're compliant to that. They have been doing the water downs that's required to keep it from being airborne, the dust. What we did make progress on is that Mr. Lefrak says that he was not going to use it in the water table. It was not going to be used for lake field purposes at all. The issue then came up is what the council desired was either to remove it or come up with a remediation plan.
Okay. Is there a way we can table this? Because I see some of the residents that are here to speak on specific question are leaving. I don't want you guys to go.
What was the
Stay
specific
here.
question?
talk about it next?
What,
Yes.
What is it that they want
The
to?
next item,
Well, we can talk about the
the
next
second
item
water
and just-
meter.
I don't mind talking about this after the second water meter.
Okay, can we do that?
move-
Because we don't want
move
them
the
to leave,
second
and they've
water
been here
meter.
since 7 o'clock. It's not nice.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so
Is it okay, council?
you can move the item, that item, not table it, but move the item before
Okay.
your discussion.
So can we go, Mr. Clerk?
Tab V, discussion regarding base charge on second meter.
Yes, I believe we do have a presentation.
Okay.
We have a presentation.
Yes, Mayor, as you indicated, you had attended a meeting.
Yes.
You request that we provide you with a lot of information regarding the second meter. I did ask Mr. Robert Chambers from Black and Beach, who conducted the study, to be here tonight to discuss the second meter, why there is a second meter, the cost savings of having a second meter,
Okay.
the cost of what it would be if people did not have a second meter.
Okay.
All of that information we're prepared to discuss tonight.
Okay. Now, is there a way we can let the residents speak and you can take notes, sir? You can still do your presentation and answer the question that our residents have regarding that second meter. Is that
Whatever
feasible?
you desire, Mayor.
Okay. Let's hear our people. Set the clock, because I know Miss Blaine is gonna be going over time. I need you folks to hear what I've heard in attending the meetings with them, so that you can understand where I'm coming from. Yes, sir.
Mayor, Council, my name is Dr. Jay Weinstein. I live at 2273 Bayview Lane in Keystone Point. I represent several residents who pooped out. They left, but I'm speaking for them as well. Unfortunately, I'm not, and I wish to say thank you very much, Mayor, for being proactive on this, by the way. You've been terrific. But it's still not resolved for me and several residents. And I'm not speaking about 2 meters. I'm speaking about residents who have 1 meter, whose bills have gone up over 100%. As I explained to you and others, I have a neighbor who's got a 7-month-old daughter. She's a single mother. Her bill went from $600 to $1,400. The usage went from 61 gallons or 53 gallon, whatever, to 163 gallons. Mine jumped from a previous 47,000 gallons, whatever it is, to 121. This was in the second quarter of this year. And there were other residents who had the same problem. None of us changed our lifestyle. Nothing changed in our house, in any of our houses. Our meters were checked. There's no leakage. As a matter of fact, as I explained to Mr. Vernon Paul before he resigned, a meter reader came out and he read the wrong meter when he came to read my meter. So when I see that happening, I'm questioning, and I'm not pointing fingers, believe me. I'm just trying to understand how all of a sudden several of the residents suddenly have a usage rate that jumps up over 100% when nothing else changed. And there's no leakage, and I just don't know what the answer is here. I know that I had to pay over $1,000. My neighbor with the little baby had to pay $1,400. And these are absurd, Mayor. I mean, and we don't know why it's happening. Maybe if we knew why it was happening, we could accept it. It isn't just a case of a rate hike.
Gotcha.
So, and I filled out the form that I was asked to fill out, submitted it to Mr. Paul. No one's ever gotten back to me on it. I guess we're discussing it tonight, but
Thank you. Yes.
that's why I'm here.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we taking them all together and then we answer all of them, or are we taking them case by case? Okay, go ahead. Yes, sure.
On this case, we went out, we did do the inspection. We did speak to a neighbor, and we learned that the doctor was doing some work, and the doctor disrupted his line. And the neighbor, his line was also disrupted as a result of him doing some sort of work in the yard. And they informed us that he had told them that, listen, let me deal with it with the city. So this is the explanation as to why he had this exorbitant bill, because there was a interruption or rupture into the line.
Not true.
What staff is doing, we were able to confirm this with the neighbor, his conversation. So what we're doing basically is reevaluating. We'll be making some adjustments without putting blame on anyone, whether it's on him or the neighbor.
2273 Bayview Lane. With all due respect, the work being done at my house was tile, which has nothing to do with the water line, and the repair that she had on her property was a sewage line. It wasn't a water line. It was an outflow sewage line. Had nothing to do with water consumption. So I don't know where you're getting your information from, but it's wrong.
Mr. Manager, I would like, it's not possible for somebody to go from 60 to 160 gallon. It does not make any sense unless there is a leak. And he said there's no leak.
There was a ruptured line, but we will be working with the resident.
Who
to
fixed the
resolve it.
ruptured line?
We have to go back to the neighbor and make that determination, but this is information coming from the neighbor.
Okay. Is there a way we can have documentations? Because I believe in showing,
Sure.
Can we do that?
Mr. Ghani will get all the information.
Thank you. Okay. Mrs. Blinn.
Yes. Okay, I have my turn now. Thank you.
Sure.
Esther Blinn, 1990 Northeast 118th Road. My husband didn't make it. He was here to speak on this issue because he was
Sure did.
very,
You've got 2 minutes, so.
very adamant about it. We came across the advertisement when they induced us to introduce a second meter. The per gallon rate was supposed to be the lowest. It's $3 and change, and that's not the lowest, and it's not tiered. So that's, first off, accounts for a huge amount of money that we're paying. Second of all, it is irrational, illogical, and incomprehensible that your base rate access fee depends on the size of the pipe to your house. This is access from the street to your property. So the fact that they're installing artificial rates that increase and double our water rates is very upsetting. There is, yes, discrimination here, and it's economic. It's because you have to have, we don't have well water, so we're not able to have one water meter. But most importantly, we were induced by the city with huge advertisements about how much we're going to save. And you can see what was here, which was a filled house, of people whose rates are doubling, whose rates are a third more or a quarter more. But most importantly, if you took the lowest water per gallon rate, you would reduce our water bills. And if you made the access base rate,
Finish your sentence.
the same whether you have a 25-inch pipe or a 1/2-inch pipe,
Okay.
we would go a long way toward being happy.
All right, thank you. Yes,
ready?
ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Susie Blumen, 1865 Northeast 117th Road. First of all, I stand corrected. I apologize. According to this PowerPoint that I'm looking at here, it had been my impression from city employees that there was one tap into the main city supply. According to this PowerPoint, there are two taps into the city supply. But being that as it may, as Mrs. Blinn had mentioned earlier, we were all kind of cajoled into getting this second meter because it was going to save us money, it was going to make the city look better, whatever. It was going to show that all these 12,000 gallons a month or whatever that was irrigation was not going back into the sewer. So again, we just feel like we were just kind of like pulled along, misled. And yes, Mayor Tondro, sometimes I am quite skeptical about what goes on in the city. You have to understand, you know, you get one thing and you get another. So I'm just standing by what I said before, though, is that it just seems like it's double taxation, that the base rate should be the lowest, and we should not have the second meter charge, the base charge. Thank you.
Okay. I hope you folks are taking notes of all those that are things that are being brought up. Okay.
Abe Rudman, 1930 Northeast 119th Road, Sans Souci. I serve on the board of the Sans Souci Homeowners Association, and so I speak not only on my own behalf, but on our neighborhood. In my particular case, my bill went from $1,700 a year to $3,000 a year, all in the last few months, on an annual basis, which is unconscionable. Water is a basic necessity of life, and you guys are giving millions of dollars to this and millions of dollars to that, and meanwhile, the water, which is what people have to have, you know, should be, if anything, should be subsidized. In every part of the city, it should be water, first and foremost. What I find is unfair is that no matter if I use 1,000 gallons or 20,000 gallons, just because I have a 1.5-inch pipe versus a 3/4-inch pipe, right? It doesn't, in the end, I should only pay for what I use, not for the width of the pipe that goes to my home. It makes no sense why there should even be a tiered rate. I looked at it, and there's a variable component of the water, and there's a fixed component of the water and sewer. An overwhelming part of the bill is fixed. Whether I use a drop of water or not, I still will pay about $2,400, $2,500 a year if I don't even use a drop, just for the access of having water and sewer, which is, again, it's unconscionable. So I think that you need to take a real strong look at this, come up with an Affordable Water Act, would be a nice thing for the city, and be fair about it, because right now what's going on is just, it's not fair at all. And finally, the irrigation meter has, in my mind, it seems like it's tripled. And I don't understand why there's a different rate for the water that goes into the main and the water that goes into irrigation, when they're both clean water. They should be the same rate. And why we have multiple access charges for the irrigation and for the home. It's just way too many charges are being piled up on us all at one time.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Richard Ennis, 13030 Northeast 10th Avenue. I should be given an extra minute since I left my house at 11:30 to come here to speak. I was watching this on streaming, and by the way, the only time you don't hear somebody is when they don't speak into the mic. The voice is fine.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Now, you have a second problem with the billing on these houses. I don't have a second meter. I have a well. I haven't used it in years. I have a pump. I don't need a second meter. You have a problem with duplexes. And when I sat down with Mrs. Johnson over a year ago, after this first came up, when you first changed the structure of the bill, I was given an explanation that didn't really make a lot of sense, but I agreed that you were screwing everybody that had a duplex. So it didn't matter. I felt I was in company with other people, so it didn't make any difference, and I figured we're all in the same boat. But I can sell your case for charging a second base charge on the irrigation meter better than the fact that you're charging me a second base charge with one meter. I have one address, one meter, one electric meter, one bill from Comcast. I am a house that happens to have a garage and an apartment detached from my house. The explanation I was given initially was it doesn't matter whether you have a detached duplex or a connected duplex, and I think this is going to affect a lot of people in Biscayne Park also. They need to know about this. The explanation I was given initially was it doesn't matter, we're going to charge you a base charge because you have a second unit. I said, okay, that doesn't make a bit of sense, but I'm going to live with that. The explanation I was given more recently when we had the meeting, and you were there, Mayor, was that, well, we actually had to look at how much money we have to recoup. So now I become a part of a co-op of North Miami on how much each resident has to pay to recoup the overall infrastructure of supplying water to people in the city. We need a little bit more money, so we had to figure another way to do it. We have to keep a base charge on an irrigation meter. We have to give another rate here. We have to charge a second base charge to people that only have one meter and they have a duplex status. So if you're going to take away this base charge for a second meter, you might as well take away my two base charges because I only have one meter. So I should have to pay any base charge. If that logic holds up and you take away this base charge for a second irrigation meter. So and I don't know if you got the information on how many duplexes, or you were going to have a meeting with someone and go over that. So you have a lot more people affected by this because of the way the billing is done.
Thank you. Now,
and by the way, my overall bill is less than it was before, but that's only because you brought down the sanitation rate.
okay,
So it has nothing to do with the water side.
good. Now, Mr. Manager, how do we want to start answering those questions? And I believe that you folks, if there's an answer that does not make sense, this is your time. You can come and intervene, as long as we're not disrespecting anyone, because this particular item was made for you and for these answers to be given to you, so we all can understand what's going on and we stop doing politics with it. So please, feel free, if one explanation is not clear to you, either to have any of them to repeat it, or for you to come or counter, whatever. I'm sorry. It's almost midnight.
Mayor,
You understand what I mean,
sure.
right?
We're going
So now, we need to address them one by one.
Sure.
You have to, I believe that your public works director is going to address the 60-gallon to 160-gallon thing, where you talk about they were doing some work and blah, blah, blah. We need to have documentation on that. Now, okay, the second resident who spoke, he said that his bill was $1,700 a year to $3,000 a year, which gives me an average of $250. He needs to understand why all of a sudden. And we understand that the pipe width, the other resident, I believe Mrs. Blinn, talk about the width of the pipe shouldn't make any difference. And Ms. Bloom talk about there's only one access, one line, blah, blah, blah. I need somebody to give me explanation and what we're gonna do about it.
Sure. I'm going to have Mr. Robert Chambers come up. Prior to him coming up, Mayor, we provided you all with a scenario based upon the average bill.
What I need to understand, Mr. Manager, first,
Okay.
why were these people told it was a good idea for
Okay.
them to have a second meter?
Sure.
Now they got the meter, everybody seems to be unsatisfied with it. I need to
Sure.
understand why were they told that they need a second meter?
Start from the beginning.
From the beginning.
For the mayor.
Okay. Some years ago, prior to me, prior to Mr. Ghani, everyone,
Yeah.
there was concern from our residents in Keystone and Sans Souci that we're being charged for sewer charges for using irrigation. There was only 1 meter at the time. So we're being charged, and it's an unfair charge. I believe that that was a fair assessment, because if people are watering their grass and you're being charged for sewer, that water stays on top and is not going back into the sewer. So a remedy to not be unfairly charged for irrigation and filling swimming pools, the city did 2 things. One is that they came up with a
Once a year.
resolution that once a year, everybody can get their swimming pools refilled, no charge.
Was that offered to the entire city or one part?
My understanding, well, okay.
Exactly.
So then the second thing was get a second meter so that you won't be charged for sewer charges. And the only way to do that is to add a second meter so that the water is not going through that 1 meter. So people think that there was only one tap. It's actually tapping twice into the 8-inch line. There's, you got to tee off for the regular meter, and then you got to tap off again, which will be in the illustration, to get the second meter. That second meter, you won't be charged for that usage on the first meter. Does that make it clear? That's the
I'm
history.
trying to follow. Because I
Okay.
remember when I went to the Sans Souci Homeowners Association, they gave me a draw where it shows only one pipe, one line going in, and they were being charged for 2.
That's incorrect, and we will show you a slide that will defute that. But the history of the second meter is because, from my understanding the history, people were told, get a second meter and you won't be charged for sewer. We'll only charge you, we'll charge you a different price, and whatever your usage would be, that won't be on the system. We might remember when the water goes through, we charge you 90% of that for sewer charges. That's how the second meter came up. What we provide,
The idea of charging for sewer, it's like whatever goes out
we charge you 90%.
comes back.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the only way most cities determine what the sewer charge is. We assume that once it goes through your system, you're going to be using it in such a way that it's going to be redistributed back through the drainage going into the sewer pipes.
Okay.
To eliminate that high charge, people were told to get a second meter and use that water so it's not on your first meter. What we have done to show residents, if you was to use, and I'll just use a 3/4 inch, your regular bill plus irrigation would be $387. That comes across from, if you did not have an irrigation meter, the average quarterly bill is $256. If you have a 3/4 bill, it's $131. Together, That's $387.
Okay, this is how much consumption of
This
water?
is an average.
When you said average,
The city is able to determine, based upon all of the users that we have, what is the average water bill for a 3/4 inch.
I understand,
what
but
is-
how much water do you have to consume to give you that amount of that bill?
It's 498, so it's 4,098 gallons.
So 5,000 gallons.
Approximately 5,000 gallons is the average use. The average use for the irrigation is approximately 8,000. Together, if you had a water bill and irrigation, you're approximately using 13,500 gallons. By having a meter, your bill is $387. If a person decides, hey, I don't
This is
want
per
that.
quarter, not per month, per
That's
quarter.
per
Okay,
quarter.
okay.
So if a user says, you know what, I don't like being charged for the base rate of having a meter to measure how much water I'm using on the irrigation, put everything on one bill, that bill would be $426. It would be approximately $40 higher for going that route.
Let me ask you something. Logically, are there any residents who consume 5,000 gallons of water per quarter only?
Yes, that's the average.
This
There's
is-
some that are lower. Per month.
Per
quarter.
month?
Per month.
Okay,
Per
so
month.
that's about 15,000 gallons per quarter.
Yes,
That's
per
correct.
quarter.
Okay, okay.
And so therefore, if a person does not have an irrigation meter, and if they have their same usage, they're going to be paying more without having a second meter, including the base charge of that second meter. So therefore, they're saving money.
Go back,
by-
go back, go back, go back, go back.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Now I'm getting lost. You said that if they were to remove the meter based on the inch, the size of the pipe,
Yes.
they will be charged more.
Yes, because
They're paying for the second meter. They're paying a base fee for both meters,
that's correct.
which is $67 or something for each meters. So therefore, their bill starts with like $174 already that they're paying before even the irrigation fees, before the water bill or anything else. Does it make sense
I-
to you? You
you're-
following me?
Yeah, you're making sense, Mayor, but what the issue is that if you put all of the irrigation usage on one meter and you don't have a second meter, all of that water usage, you're going to be charged for sewer charges. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because you're not separating it from the main water meter. Therefore, your bill will be higher because your consumption is higher. You're not only going to pay the sewer, but it's going to throw you into a higher tier bracket for using so much water.
So the water that they use either for the grass or to wash their boat, it will be charged also like some water coming back in? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, absolutely, because it's coming out of one meter. The city has no way of measuring sewer other than what goes into the system. We're estimating that 90% is coming out of the system.
Okay, now, what's the difference between 3/4 inch, 1 inch, and 1.5 inch?
That, I will defer to our consultant who can explain all of that.
Good evening, sir. Thanks for saying so late. Thank you so much.
No problem. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council Member, City Manager, Robert Chambers, Black and Beach. I will answer the question as it relates to the meter charges and the sizes of the meters. But before I do so, I'd just like to follow up on what City Manager was describing as it relates to what has happened in the past and the difference between having 2 meters as compared to 1 meter. as the diagram demonstrates, if you had 2 meters, you would have the irrigation meter, which would have a single volumetric charge for irrigation, which would have no sewer charge. The potable water meter would have a charge for water usage. Let's say the average was 5,000 for water, 8,000 for irrigation. And along with that water usage, you'd have a sewer charge. Now, if all that 13,000 gallons went on 1 meter, you would have 13,000 gallons of water charges and 13,000 gallons of associated sewer charges, which, based on the calculation that the city has done, would increase the bill. So that's the first question as it relates to the differences in 2 meters as compared to 1. As it relates to why is there a meter charge? American Water Works Association, AWWA, has developed meter-based equivalency factors that demonstrate that for a typical customer who is registered with the city, based on the usage requirement and the demand that customer will place on the system, that demand will have a certain requirement for the city to provide service. For example, that blue line, that blue distribution line that the tap is made from, depending on the type of customer, is going to be larger or smaller. As such, the need for service is measured, and the meter charges are developed and assessed based on the demand and the requirement for service that each customer will need. As such, that is the basis for the meter-based charges and why some charges are higher than others. Did I answer your question sufficiently?
Could you address the 3/4 inch, the 1 inch, and the 1 1/2? Why they have different sizes
Okay.
and different rates?
Okay, the reason why they have different sizes and different rates is if you look at the typical average usage for a 3/4 inch customer versus a 1 inch customer versus a 1 1/2 inch customer will be different. The 3/4 inch customer will have a lower typical average usage, and that usage typical average will go up as the meter size goes up. So it is based on meter equivalency studies that have been done by companies like myself, by national organizations, which the American Water Works Association, that says for a typical customer that requires this type of service, this is the associated meter you will need to serve that customer. As such, there's an associated cost with providing that service, and it is a uniform and graduated step-by-step increase for that service.
May I ask a
In
question?
addition to that, Mayor.
Hold on.
Okay.
So are you saying if I use 0 water on a 3/4 inch pipe and I use 0 water on a 1 1/2 inch pipe, that I'm paying the same access charge?
No, you would not be
So
paying.
why am I paying more money to use no water because my pipe is larger? The fact that I may, on average, use more water during the course of a year because I have a 1 1/2 inch pipe, fine, I'll pay more because of the number of gallons I use. But let's say I decide to use 0 gallons. Why are you charging a lot higher fixed cost price access fee for a different size pipe? Because, and I had no choice to choose that pipe. I moved into a home that had that situation. Why am I penalized for that?
Okay. It's a very fair question, and I totally understand. I totally understand where you're coming from as it relates to usage. That, if you don't use any water and you have a 3/4 inch or an 1 1/2 inch, you still have to pay for that service.
Have to pay more, a lot more.
Or you have to pay more.
To use no water.
Yeah, the reason why is water systems are typically built based on the peak hour requirements. You have an average day requirement and you have a peak hour requirement. What the peak hour requirement states is that if every person on the system connected was to use their water at the same time, the coincidental demand at the same time, to turn on all your pipes at the same time, you as a utility would have to make sure that service is available. Okay? As such, the size of the pipe and the size of the meter will make sure you have the service you need. So that's the first part of the component. Your meter charge, which is also your availability charge, making that service available. Secondly, you have the charge associated with your volumes, what you use. So the more you use, the more you pay, as it relates to, the unit charge. So to answer your question, the reason why you have to pay for service with a different meter or a higher meter is because even though you may not turn that pipe on and no water may come, the people, the plant managers that treat water every day, the city staff, the administrative folks, the pipes in the ground, everybody in the city that is a part of the team that serves the customers still has to do everything to make sure that service is available, and turning on the pipe is just one of the components that will be utilized to charge for that.
I can
fee.
understand if I was a commercial laundry or a business with an 1.5-inch pipe and I was using, but we're residents. We should not be treated and taxed. Water, you're taxing water to a resident just because of a pipe, not because I use more, or if I use anything, but because of the potential that as a resident, I'm going to overwhelm the system. That doesn't have logic to me. Not as a resident. I have another issue I want to ask you about.
Just one clarification before you move on. The meter size for your irrigation system, you said you went into the house or you bought the house with the size. This is normally done by the engineer or the architect designing the property, and it depends on the type of irrigation system that you have. Each irrigation system is designed to deliver a volumetric rate, let's say 20 gallons per minute or 30 gallons per minute to operate the heads on your irrigation system. So it all depends on the area that you're irrigating and the size of your heads to deliver that volumetric rate to your system, to the area that you're trying to irrigate. So just a clarification, this is not an arbitrary number like 3/4 inch or 1.5 inch to deliver for irrigation. It all depends on the size that when your home was built and the area that you irrigation, the engineer or certified architect putting in that system.
Okay, but that's your study, that's your feeling.
No, it's not a study.
But then the city council has to represent the people, right? And if the people think it's unfair, living in a residence and being overly charged just because of the size of a pipe, that no one homeowner is going to overwhelm the system.
Correct.
So let's get realistic about what's happening here. The second issue is there any distinction of quality of water that pumps through my sprinkler versus or I wash my car with versus what I drink out of my drain, my fountain? Is there any quality difference in the water? No.
It's all potable.
Okay, so then why is the rate for washing my car water, sprinkling my grass water, double the rate for the water that I drink inside the home?
Go ahead.
Where for almost 40 years, it wasn't double or triple. It was like a third of the main water use. It not only it went from a third of the main to double, almost triple of the main. Why?
Okay. I cannot comment on exactly how what was done in the past was exactly developed or when it was developed. But what I will say about the question as it relates to why the irrigation unit rate is higher, as you said, than, let's say, the residential rate. As a part of initiating this study, there were some regulatory requirements as it relates to the water management district and your consumptive use permit that required that required that you make some adjustments to your rate to promote conservation. As a part of getting your water supply from the water management district. You have to demonstrate that you're taking and making and utilizing all your resources to utilize your water resources as best as possible, one of which is promoting conservation to conserve your water resources. So that was a regulatory requirement of this process. Now, why is the sprinkler volumetric charge higher? Okay. As a part of promoting conservation and trying to achieve some of the same affordability concerns that you're addressing, what we had to do was look at the characteristics of your customer base. And for some of those lower usage blocks, we had to develop a conservation rate that also took into consideration the affordability of the bill. Having, especially, your fixed income residents, for example, how would they be able to pay for it as compared to what they paid before? So as a part of developing the conservation rates, base rates, we had to look at the mix of your usage profile, and as we've done here, initiated a process for lower blocks with a lower rate, and as you use more, that unit rate goes up for the higher blocks. For example, the residential class, if we were to take the entire usage for the residential class, which is one of your bigger classes, and divided all the costs by the usage, we would get something, a number which is probably closer to the irrigation rate than the first block, which is the lowest rate. Now, the reason why, coming to your question now, why is the irrigation rate higher? It's about the cost to serve the irrigation customers. The irrigation class is about, less than 10% of your customer base. Their average usage per customer is significantly higher than the average usage for a residential customer. As such, there are certain city services, the bigger pipe, you have to make sure the mains are available to provide the service, all the administrative services that go into providing the irrigation service. All these costs roll up into this cost bucket, but you have less units because you have less customers as a part of the irrigation class. So if you have, higher costs with less customers, less units, the unit rate is going to be higher. So that's the main reason why the irrigation class on a unit basis is lower. And it is not required that we develop a conservation base rate for the irrigation class. So for the lower usage blocks, we wouldn't start with a lower rate.
So in other words, I can take my main water and wash my car. Yes? I'm not conserving. You're incentivizing me to use that main water to wash my car because it's cheaper to use that water. I know you're going to say, well, now there's a sewer component, right? But if you're just looking at the water, and by the way, when you did your average, you may have done an accurate average of the whole city. Problem is that the city is made up of single-family homes, and it's made up of condominiums and apartments and many things, right? So if you look at single-family homes, what the message the city is sending is that you should not buy a city family home in the city of North Miami because we are going to go after your water bill. You're okay if you buy a condo here because we're not going to hit you so hard. It's okay if you rent an apartment in the city, we're not going to hit you hard. But if you're a single family homeowner who has an irrigation meter and has cars to wash and things, to do, we're getting completely socked in the head with these charges. It's unfair.
Can I ask a question? Can they get a smaller inch pipe? Can the pipe be changed?
I'll defer to the
from a
Public Works
1.5
Director.
inch to a 3/4 inch. Can it be changed?
For the engineering design of the pipe, that was the requirement when the architects and the engineers built the property. That
Okay,
was
but
the regulatory requirement
Now,
for that
is
facility.
it possible for a homeowner to decide that they want to change the size of the pipe?
That's up to it.
If the sizing of the pipe were based on the original plans of the building and it was designed by a certified engineer or architect, no. If they want to go ahead, they just go and pull a permit to change out the size of the pipe, we will come out and change it. But based on an engineering design, no, they just cannot go out and change it.
Okay, I remember when I asked the questions, the first time I went to meet with the Sans Souci Association, and I was told that the size of the pipe decides the amount of pressure that goes in when the people are consuming water. Is that correct?
The volumetric, yeah, that's correct.
Okay,
Yes.
so if they change the pipe, which some of them can do, can they? They cannot. They cannot?
Changing the pipe would dependent on the architect or engineer and the area that you're irrigating.
It has to do with the area.
Yeah, that's correct.
When they mean by the area, they mean by the square footage of the property, not geographical area,
okay.
but by the
Yeah.
area that you're serving, how wide, how big your yard is, whether or not you have a one-story or a two-story. If you have a two-story house, then the architect, and to ensure that you're getting the accurate amount of pressure, they're going to require a larger diameter pipe, because if you was to cut on all of your water at once, you expect to have the same flow. You don't want your shower to go down because somebody upstairs or in if you have a 3 or 4 bathroom house, you're going to require a larger diameter because the architect is expecting that there could be a possibility that 4 people are going to take a shower all at one time, while somebody's using the water to, your dishwasher's going, your washing machine is going. So it's an expectation that the architect is saying, you need a larger diameter pipe because of the type of house that you have. That's what they mean by the area.
There was a gentleman
By
last
the
time I
number
went
of
to the
fixtures,
meeting.
sorry.
He's the manager of a building, and he believes that somewhere, somehow, the billing system is not working for the apartment units. He lives by you, Scott. Remember this gentleman? He said he wouldn't be able to be here tonight because he works.
Oh.
The guy was the accountant.
I
And,
know.
Oh, yeah.
When
it's,
you had the town
Costa-
hall meeting.
Costa Cryman. He's with Waterside Towers, I believe, one of the condos on 135th Street. Plus, there are some condo people we service in Miami Shores who don't feel they're being billed at the right rates. They're both on my open case list and have been for weeks, if not months. So I'll just take this moment to say, Aleem, I'm sorry. I've got a waiting list of constituents like this who've written in over the last months with their individual. Please answer those, because it would start to eliminate some of what we're doing tonight if
Sure.
we could timely address each individual person's thing.
I have a question.
Sorry.
Yeah?
Yes, go ahead.
Kind of, what is the purpose of this workshop?
It's not a workshop.
I mean, what's the purpose?
It's an item put in the agenda because on several occasions the issue that is very hot in the city of North Miami, and me being at different homeowners association were addressed questions that the citizen has and they still have that are unanswered. And it seems like the efforts that they have made to reach out to the city to have a logical explanation to them have not taken them anywhere.
May I ask a question?
And also,
Please.
can I finish?
Sure.
Okay. And also, the water bill issue has become like the carrot and the rabbit on a political basis. We're talking about people's economy. We're talking about people's lifestyle. We're talking about real people, not.
So what we want to accomplish tonight?
I told them, I invited them to come here tonight to go ahead and ask the gentleman to come from Atlanta who made the study for the second water meter to address the issues of the residents. It can take as long as it took. The idea is that everybody's clear when we walk out of here, the questions are answered, and a satisfaction for everybody so we can put that particular item to rest.
But I have bad news for you, Madam Mayor. This is not the first time that we actually have.
Well, it's the first time, and I'm sure it's the last time, because they have legitimate questions.
No, I know.
And these questions need to be answered. And I'm hearing some logical answers. But that does not, I think somewhere, somehow, there's a communication problem
But the
here. And they need to understand it, and we need to understand where they're coming from when they're complaining.
Can I give you an example of miscommunication?
Can I speak for a minute, please? Because I've been bringing this up since February, at council meeting after council meeting, before, during, and after election, and I've been speaking to Mr. Ghani since last February, and I would like to ask him a couple questions, so we can go on, if that's okay.
You have 2 meters too?
I have a second meter that I disconnected probably over 20 years ago. I don't not use my second meter.
So you mean you never can find staff to ask questions?
I have been speaking to staff since February, and I would like to speak and ask questions because I still can't get questions. And I've been attending every homeowners meeting except the last one, discussing this item with the homeowners. I think I should be able to speak and speak for the homeowners because I've been saying this for almost a year. And Mr. Ghani, when I spoke to you in February, we spoke about, that's when the bills first came out. That's when all of a sudden, the bills came out in February through, I think, June of 2012 is when they got the first bill. And I complained, number one, why we had the big base rates, a second base rate, and also why the homeowners were getting charged for the second meter. They were not getting tiered water rates. You explained there was a study done, a study was approved, and in order to change that, we would have to have a new study. You also said if we changed the rates at this point, it would affect our budget because we had already budgeted the projected income from these base rates and the projected water use. Okay. Going forward, we met before budget. I sent letters. This was my main issue for my budget request back in July. You said we needed a new study. I asked for a study to be prepared. I also asked for projection in our budget that when we did get a rate reduction for the second irrigation owners, that our budget would allow for the shortfall in income from that. That being said, I have been told by staff that we allocated $20,000 to $30,000 for that needed study. I have sent a couple letters to staff asking, have we started the study? What is the status of the study? So that is my first question tonight. Have we instituted, has our engineers here, have they started? Are they redoing a study? I would like that answer because that's what I'm trying to tell my constituents. Oh, we're doing a study. I can't get an answer. Are we redoing a study? How much have we spent so far, and are we spending that? And then I want to know if we're going to be able to reduce the rates for the constituents because it seems like they're subsidizing the water system. Thank you.
You're correct in the first two statements that you made. You did request us to look into the irrigation meter and look at conducting another study. I said it has to be budgeted. Through the city manager, it has to be budgeted. And no study on modifying or making changes to the existing rate study that was done has been completed or has been commissioned.
The new study has
not been commissioned, no.
Okay, now I was told the other day that it has been, and it's been instituted, so I'm not getting answers. And you set aside, I believe, $30,000 for this study. 20, 30,000, Mr. Soy. Didn't you tell me that? We have 30,000 budgeted for a study. We've been requesting it. Why isn't the study being done? And I was told by you, Mr. Manager, I think last Friday, what's the status? And I've been sending emails. What's the status with this study? How are we doing with it?
Through the mayor, let me answer that
Thank you.
question, Councilwoman. We spoke to Black and Beach about conducting the study. My conversation recently with Mr. Chambers was that, and I thank them for it, but to conduct a study, they would be going back over what they've already completed. So, as he explained to me, and maybe he can go into further details about it, that we did a resolution, we met regulatory requirements that we were mandated to do. So he's going to do a study as to whether or not it's feasible for us to take away the second meter. his response to me is that they should not do that study because if we take away the charge, then his concern would be we would have to allow everyone to have a second meter. And if we wanted to do that study, then we would have to redo our entire rate study structure.
Which is what we were going to do. So I've been lied to because you've told me you set aside money for a study. I've been told the study has been started. So now you're telling me we're not going to do a study. So if we're not going to do a rate study, that really means this whole procedure up here is really worthless because you're not going to do anything to help the citizens with a second meter.
I think that what we're saying, Councilwoman, and Mr., I don't want to put, he can explain better, but he can take our money and do a study, or he can give us a correct and a professional analysis, which is what he's done. He's came here, he's flew in, he has some recommendations, but he also has some concerns. He can take our money.
What I've been asking for the past 9 months is a reduction, a great reduction in the second base rate of the second water meters, a reduction, and also to fairly tier the water.
Okay.
We're going to be able to do that? I mean,
Okay,
all these questions, we're going and we're just saying the same thing over and over. We know what the problem is. Are we going to be able to help the
Madam, please
citizens?
give him a chance to answer.
Oh,
Can we listen to what he has to say, please?
okay. That we did discuss it in length, and what I did was to answer your first question, can it be done? Can we look at it? Yes, we can. Ultimately, it becomes a policy decision for the council as it relates to where you want to go with that second meter, and then what are the considerations and potential consequences related to that policy decision, right? So what I highlighted is you had a regulatory mandate that said you needed to implement conservation-based rates, and you did. You're currently in the process of getting SRF low-income funding, which require pledge revenues. As a part of the process, you would have to, it would have an impact on your SRF funding as it relates to including SRF and going through the process of getting new rates approved and tariffed to demonstrate that you have pledge revenues. And then there are other considerations as it relates to your general customer base, and if you lower rates and so forth, how it impacts all the customers you serve.
Well, I understand that. That's why I asked to budget for that shortfall, because what we were talking about was a $400,000 shortfall if we eliminated the second base rate and changed back to a tiered system. So we're talking $400,000 unless we do it.
Okay,
that's the only thing that's going to help the citizens.
Okay, I haven't looked at the numbers, but to answer your question, and as I said before, it's something we could look at, but ultimately it becomes a policy decision for the council upon understanding what alternatives may be available and what direction you'd like to take.
May I ask a couple quick questions? Two quick questions. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for putting this on the agenda tonight. I know the people that came to that town hall truly appreciate it. First, as a question, physically, geographically, what is the dividing line for where the city stops providing water and the county starts providing water within city limits?
Around which area or what part of the city you're looking?
I've always sort of been under the understanding that everything east of the railroad tracks is provided by the county, and that everything west is provided by the city at Winston Water Plant.
Actually, it's a little further west. It's along Griffin Boulevard. We have one of the largest meters, or the interconnect that they are called. Along Griffin Boulevard is one of the largest, so I think it's a little further west.
So give me something solid. What is the dividing line geographically between where the city's providing water and where the county is providing water.
There is no clear physical geographic. No engineer could come here and tell you there's a clear dividing line where the city provides water and where not unincorporated is, or sorry, where Miami-Dade provides the water. It's one system.
Okay.
We have 6 interconnects in the system. Interconnects being connection to Miami-Dade County's system. Our models have shown that we cannot physically say, okay, Miami-Dade County, your water ends on 6th Avenue. City of North Miami, your water starts on 8th Avenue. It's one complete system. We have ran a model, and it's a complete mix of Miami-Dade County water and City of North Miami Winston Water Treatment Plant water.
Okay, here's my concern. Here's my thought. I looked at the county's website.
Right.
Their base meter charge for a 3/4 inch meter is $3.20. Our base charge last year was $11.20.
Correct.
So people who are getting county water within the city of North Miami are being paid North Miami rates for something we're buying from the county at county rates. We're buying that water from the county at $3.20 base charge, and then you go from there. And our customers, wherever they must be, I always thought there was one, they're paying $8 more. Right there, you can see that there are some residents who are paying more than their fair share to subsidize this city's water system.
Okay.
We need to figure out a whole lot more clearly where the county water is and where the city water is, and start charging people some fairer rates. That's my first opinion. My second opinion is that we should lessen the water meter, the second irrigation meter base charge. That charge is toward the, it's a consistent $3.18 across the board. If you look at the other tiered rates that we've set up, that's like a high-end commercial rate. So we're charging our residences the $3.18 base water meter charge, second irrigation meter charge, but that's toward the high end of the scale, not toward the middle end of the scale. I would say we could pass along some savings. You don't bring it down to the bottom of the scale because maybe that doesn't encourage conservation, but we're at the top end instead of maybe somewhere at the middle. I'd like to see us sort of bring that back. So
Two things, comments really. Miami-Dade County has over 500,000 customers on their system. So again, is economies of scale. City of North Miami has 23,000 customers. Their capacity is 160 million gallons per day. Our capacity is 9.3 million gallons. We supplement another 6 million by purchasing from Miami-Dade County. So again, the question is economies of scale. We produce for a smaller amount, they produce for a lot larger. So they will produce it at a lower per capita or per average
maybe you
rate.
come to a happy medium. The reality of it is, the people who are getting the county water,
Right.
we're paying $3.20 base. They're paying us $11. We're profiting per household $8 per base, and then it goes from there. So I don't like the city profiting on the backs of the people when we're getting the water for a whole lot cheaper than that.
Yeah, Councilman, again, as I described in the beginning, it's one system. There is no way that I could take a drop of water and say, okay, you came from unincorporated, and this guy, you came from North Miami.
But
So,
then if you
hold on,
know,
hold
if
on,
you
hold
know
on.
that-
We
So
ran-
my question to
we
you,
ran models.
My question is this.
Yes.
Councilman just talked about we getting it for $3 and something cents from the county. So all the residents of the city are paying the same rate, $11 and something?
That is correct.
So you need, let's say, you just said we produce 9,000, what was it?
9.3 MGDs is our permitted capacity.
In
Million gallons per day.
Okay.
Million gallons per day.
So we're producing 9 million gallons and we're purchasing 6 million gallons.
Correct.
Somebody who's got a great financial degree or some sort of brain, if you give me tomorrow on a good night's sleep, I'll do it. Come up with a financial way that you sort of spread that cost out, where you've got to figure out a way that there are, I'm trying to do the math in my head, easily essentially two-thirds, one third of our population is paying $8 more than the other guys are.
Everybody's
right?
paying the same thing. That's what he said.
Why don't we buy 100% from Dade County then?
Madam Mayor, if I may,
Shut down our
staff is
plant.
not,
Yeah.
there's an important issue
If they
that
have more
staff,
economies of scale. I'm sorry.
there's an important issue that staff is not covering. Remember, our permit to continue to draw water, we had to come up to standards. In order to be compliant with the permit, the county or the state who regulates water and water systems, they came in and they evaluated our system. They said, listen, your plant needs to be upgraded. Your piping, which is underneath the ground, nobody can see it, needs to be upgraded, has a certain grade. And if you're going to continue to be in the business of providing water, you must upgrade your system. And in order for us to give you this permit, you must meet all of these new regulatory requirements because you're starting your 20 years all back over again. So therefore, the state is mandating that we come up with the rate to charge residents based upon the amount of users that we have, based upon the amount of water that we're drawing, and incorporated into that is the cost to provide a system and to upgrade a system that is up to regulatory requirements. Therefore, our rates are different based upon our system. If our water plant was in top-notch condition after they did the evaluation after 20 years, then maybe our rates would not have to be so high. Maybe we don't need if we didn't need new filters, if we didn't need new pipings in the ground. Whenever you pull a permit, just like when you buy a home, when you go buy a home and you want to make changes, they make you bring it up to code. That's what we had to do in this situation. And so therefore, being that we are regulated or mandated to come up to code, all of these changes have to be made. It's not the city. The state required and said, listen, we want you to promote conservation. We want you to upgrade your system. So in order to do that, here's some money that's under 2%, almost like 1.5%. But in order to get this money, not only will you have to come under regulatory requirements, but we want you to conduct all of these studies to ensure. I understand the gentleman. Maybe it wasn't like that 10 years ago, 20 years ago, in 1990. But the issue is you now have to become compliant. The regulatory agencies are mandating that we do it. So when they evaluated our system through the consultant, Black and Veatch, they assessed it and said, this is what you have to do. I understand, I got a half an inch. What about if I don't use it? Well, guess what? It's like your cell phone. Some people pay for text. Some people pay for extra usage. If you don't use it, you still have to pay for it. It's a service. In order for us to become compliant, when that 20-year permit ended in 2012,
2012 we started.
Last year,
The new
we
one.
started the new one. They said, hey, we're not going to grant this permit unless you come up, bring your pricing up. Your system needs all of these repairs. And guess what? The cost of these repairs and all of these regulatory requirements have to be spread out evenly, equitably among all of your users.
Now, let me ask you,
It's no longer
do we
equitable.
have, excuse me, Madam Keys, do we have the option of closing the plant and use only county water? Is that an option?
We have the option of selling our water plant if we desire. I don't recommend that, but we could do that.
What would be the difference if we were not to use our water, use the county water with the same price? What would the downfall of going that route be?
I would have to evaluate that, but the issue came up, and I remember.
Do we have to have a water plant? This is the
Do we have
bottom
to have a
line.
water plant? I spoke with Mr. Feldman about 6 months ago, who's been monitoring this. As he said, Mr. Johnson, sell your water plant. That's what I was trying to get them to do. This issue has been, this water bill has been an issue, ever since I was a city manager, before I was a city manager, after I was a city manager. If you wanted to go away, sell your water plant. However, my concern with this and talking to other city managers, what happens when you can't control it? What happens if you're allowing somebody else to do it? You have no control. Already, we have regulatory agencies that are demanding us. They will come in and take over our system if we're not compliant. Now you're going to give it to another agency to run it, and you have no control. We can be in the position of Biscayne Park.
But that was cool when we privatized garbage.
And it brought the price down.
Right, and this would bring the price down too.
It's a policy decision. Yeah.
Madam Mayor.
To
Yeah,
touch
and
on
with
that,
the Miami-Dade County bond money, it's going to
No.
go up.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to clarify something for the record. Your water system is what they call an enterprise funds, which is different than your regular funds. You have certain obligations. For example, right now, you need money to upgrade your water plant. You have a rate. Each time, whether you want to decrease your rate or to increase your rate, you are required to do study to justify the change in the rate. So one way or the other, if you're going to do that, you have to do it. Moreover, the reason the county is cheaper is because we have a consent agreement with the county as a local government. The county has impact fees that if you have a restaurant or you have a business and you want water, you in North Miami, even though you in North Miami, you got to go and pay the county $20,000, $30,000 of water impact fees for them to allow you to get a permit to get water from North Miami. So they don't get the money per gallon, but they get the money up front to what they call impact fees before you can even get a permit to open a business. As a local government, the city of North Miami cannot allow a restaurant or a business on 125th Street to open without having to go and pay Miami-Dade County a lump sum amount of money as impact fees for water. When I was building a restaurant on 125th Street, we came to North Miami. North Miami sent us to Miami-Dade County. We had to pay $17,000 worth of impact fees to Miami-Dade. And they get the money up front. That's number one. Number two, the concern about having the smaller meter or bigger meter size are based on the design for your sprinkler system. If I have a small yard and I'm going to irrigate a small area, based on the design, the size of the pipe is based on that. The size of the meter who's bringing the water is based on the design. It's not the same thing for somebody who has a huge yard versus somebody who has a small yard. So the idea that you can change the size of the meter, you have no power over that. Under the Florida Building Code, the engineer or architect who's going to design the sprinkler system based on the square footage of the area is required to use certain size of pipe and size of meter to comport with the law. It's not something that government can say, well, get a smaller meter of a 1/4 inch because it's going to be less money. Right. There is a law called the building code that requires the meter based on the size. If I have a house at 10,000 square feet, my consumption, or I have 6 bathrooms, I'm going to have a larger meter because I need, based on the design, I need more water. I can't change the pipe because it won't work. Okay?
One point of clarification, Madam Mayor. Miami-Dade County, I just pulled it up. In June of this year, Miami Herald had an article. Over the next 5 years, Miami-Dade County water and sewer rates would be increasing by a 33% increase. They are looking at, I'm pulling up the article, sorry, it's a little small, 180 to 135 $1 million in infrastructure improvements within the next 5 years. Just do a typical search and you could pull it up.
And even if you increased it to 100%, it's still only half of what we're paying, what they're paying us. I mean, 320, 1120, 33% on that, right, it's another buck. So that 33% sounds monstrous, but 420 versus 1120, okay?
Yeah, but Councilman, that's just one component on the base charges. We still provide all the other services that Miami-Dade provides, in our water system. We do have customer service. We still have one of the better, water quality in the county. If you want to be in control of your destiny as a city with your water, then the way to go is keeping your water plant. And if you don't want to be in control in the water business, then your option is to sell the plant.
I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and proceed with the study that we've all agreed in the budget. And that's the only way we're going to get an answer, is if we can make a reduction for our citizens, the only way we're going to do it is with a study. So I'd like to proceed with the study that we talked about.
Let me ask how long ago have you conducted that study for the people to go ahead and to encourage the people to go ahead and put their water meter, the second water meter?
We conducted the study, completed the study about almost a year and a half ago.
Year and a half ago.
If